Microphone check 1 2. What is this? The Black Psychologist podcast is back to business. Fresh off some much needed participation in some self care activities that may or may not have involved us being on a beach or not. You never know where we may be. All right. Just know that it was well deserved and much needed. And we appreciate everybody being patient and being, rocking with us during this time off. We know it's been, 2 or 3 weeks since you last heard and saw us and such. So we appreciate it. There have been some individuals, some comments and things have been wanting us to get out there and put some more content out there. So we appreciate the love. All right. I am one half of your humble and gracious host, Dr. Kyle Osborne. He is I and I am him. And of course, you all know I'm never flying this plane on my own. I'm here with my friend, my colleague, my co-host, my co-pilot. He lays it out for y'all to play it out. Once again, the incredible Dr. Jason Coleman. How are you, good brother?
I'm good, man. Obviously, I want to reiterate what you said. Like, we want to thank everybody for hanging with us. It's been a long couple of weeks. We kind of needed a little bit of, self-care, running around, doing different things. But definitely appreciate everybody who takes the time to listen and tunes in. So we appreciate it. And moving forward, we're going to probably have content coming out a little bit quicker because, a couple of things are loosening up, at least on my end. So
That's right.
just want to appreciate everybody for hanging with us. Just thankful for all the support. And yeah, we're going to get into it. What's
Yes,
going on,
sir.
brother? What's going on?
Nothing, man. Like you said, so much needed and some time off for us to run around and do some things, a little maneuvering out in these streets. So yeah, again, we appreciate the love and the feedback from everybody, and a lot's happened, man. I feel like as soon as we did the last episode, like a whole bunch of news and information and events started to take place. I feel like it was a conspiracy, like they wanted us to get back out there and give our takes. So, with just a quick little rundown, some things that we definitely wanted to acknowledge. Um, Earlier this month, the father and son convicted of murdering Ahmaud Arbery were both given additional sentences of life in prison on federal hate crimes and federal hate charges. So, while the neighbor was sentenced to 35 years in prison. So, and they're going to serve their sentences in state prison, not federal prison that had been requested by the attorneys. And same goes with the Breonna Taylor situation. So the Justice Department also had charged the four current and four former Louisville Metro Police Department officers with federal crimes related to her death. And so the federal charges were announced. And they, what happened is that they looked at it as far as the unit that entered her apartment and unfortunately murdered her. They falsified the affidavit that was used to obtain the search warrant in the first place, right, to enter her home. So this act, as they said, violated her federal civil rights, and so that's what resulted in Miss Taylor's death. So we're starting to see some depending on kind of swing in the other direction regarding when a lot of these unfortunate events where these individuals were murdered, starting to see some justice, right? Not for all, but it's always good when you're kind of starting to see that these charges and people being held responsible. Because for a lot of the time and for a long, extensive time, that wasn't happening. So it's always good to acknowledge when justice is starting to prevail, at least in these particular situations. So I'm hopeful, like that's a sign of things to come when these events happen. You don't want to see these events happen, but when they do take place, you hope that justice will be served. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And also, unfortunately, Bill Russell passed away on July 31st of 2022 at the age of 88.
Right.
And that goes without saying that Bill Russell, was a legend, not just on the court, but off the court. A lot of the NBA and the players wouldn't be where they are now if it weren't for Bill Russell and everything that he contributed and everything that he sacrificed throughout the game. on the court, I mean, what, 13 seasons, 11 championships, right? That says it for
Right,
itself. And then,
right, icon.
yeah, absolutely. And for what he did off the court in regards to civil rights and just him making his impact, I mean, that just kind of goes with it. We could do a whole episode on that alone. So recently they just announced that the NBA is going to retire the number 6. So after this year, no one's going to be able to wear that jersey number, which I feel is appropriate. So absolutely want to acknowledge that to him and his family and everything that he contributed to the game of basketball and just to life overall. So yeah, yeah.
And he has the most championships, right?
Absolutely.
13.
Listen, man, he has 11 championships in 13 seasons. Like, I mean, you can't even what can you I mean, look, he has an extra one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He got the extra, and then you have a finger for all his rings, man. Like that's to say that that's impressive will be an understatement.
But definitely a great man, though. Definitely.
Absolutely. So yeah, they're gonna be celebrating his accomplishments and just his life throughout the whole NBA upcoming season. So that's gonna be great. Staying in sporting news, what shouldn't be celebrated, unfortunately, is Deshaun Watson, Jay. All right. Now, this has been unfolding for the better part of the year. And so recently, it seems like they've kind of come to a decision regarding his situation. So for people that aren't aware, we'll try to do a quick recap of everything. So earlier this month, Deshaun Watson was given a 6-game suspension. Now, the length of the suspension was due to the decision of a retired federal judge, Sue L. Robinson, who oversaw the Watson disciplinary hearings and that took place in June. So she, in her notes, she stated that Watson's nonviolent sexual misconduct or sexual conduct helped him avoid the longer suspension. She said, although this is the most significant punishment ever imposed on an NFL player for allegations of nonviolent sexual conduct, Mr. Watson's pattern of conduct is more egregious than ever before reviewed by the NFL. So after this was passed down, the NFL and Commissioner Roger Goodell decided to appeal the suspension, seeking a greater punishment for Deshaun Watson, who's now with the Cleveland Browns. He was formerly with the Houston Texans. So he decided to appeal the suspension, seeking a greater punishment due to the quote unquote egregious and predatory behavior. So fast forward last Thursday, Deshaun accepted a settlement of 11 games and a fine of $5 million. And this was negotiated by the NFL and the NFL Players Association. In addition, he must undergo a personal evaluation and an evaluation by the behavior experts and follow their treatment plan. All right. Now, Watson has settled 23 of the 24 lawsuits, and he's not facing any criminal charges after 2 grand juries declined to charge him. All right. So this is where we are, Jay. After a whole year and everything playing out, this is where we have arrived at. 11 games and a $5 million fine. All right. And personal evaluation by behavior experts, and he has to follow their treatment plan. First and foremost, neither one of us are in a place or in a position where we can say whether he's guilty or innocent, but I'm going to say that none of this smells right. All right. Throughout the accusations and things that we're saying and the testimony and all thing else. I mean, these accusations against him came from more than like 60 different massage therapists that he had worked with within like a 15-month period, Jay. I think it was through like late 2019 to early 2021. But 60 massage therapists came forward and said that he was completely inappropriate, sexual misconduct, other different things. I'm not going to get into like the nitty gritty and all the graphic details. But it was pretty disturbing. And for me, I know emotionally, a lot of people or a lot of us, in particular, probably, women, are saying that this is not enough. right? 11 games for what he did, for what he was accused of, or whatever the situation may be. And honestly, I don't know, given what he's accused of, if there are ever going to be enough games that could like be the equivalent of the pain that these 24 women or however many women said that they had to go through, right? This horrific experience that they, you know, I don't know if 11 games or whatever suspension that would have came up with is ever going to be enough. You know, you can't really put a price on trauma, on sexual misconduct, on assault, or whatever the situation may be. I just know overall, I don't know, the situation doesn't smell right, right? It's a lot of number of people, a lot of with these similar stories, and you know, it's a situation, especially with, you know, the behavioral experts and whatever this personal evaluation, whatever that may entail. um I kind of, it's similar to some of the cases that we've talked about in the past, right, where we've talked about notable figures that have done some of these other this sexual misbehavior. And again, my first thing is, well, the treatment that they're talking about, right, or they're referring to, how effective is that going to be if you give and go, or go based off of his apology and his, you know, him maintaining that he didn't do anything wrong? How effective is that going to be if he doesn't feel like he did anything wrong?
But let's see, this is the thing, right? We've already talked about whether or not we feel like he did something. Me and you feel like he did something.
Yeah.
Right? But this is the problem. And unfortunately, I gotta be the one to point it out. Like, everybody wants to talk about 100 different things at the same time. Like, do I feel like 30 people lied? No. Right? I feel like more than most likely he did something inappropriate, right? Now, that's the same conversation as how many football games he should be suspended. I think it's a totally different conversation. The reason why I'll say that is because, again, right? And look, and I'll just take what you said. I'm not even arguing against you, but I'm saying this is why us as fans don't suspend players, because what you said is absolutely right. There's no amount of games that you could give somebody that's going to equate to either A, how fans feel about it, or B, how his accusers or the victims feel about it. There's no amount of games, right? So because of that, you bring in a judge to rule on precedent. Precedent meaning this ain't the first sexual assault case that the NFL has had, right? We sit around, we've talked about Ben Roethlisberger several times. And I'm not just trying to, but we're talking about more than one sexual assault or allegation. And I'm only bringing it up in terms of the NFL has precedent in terms of how they handle these issues. And they haven't really cared that much in terms of suspending the players.
Right.
We've talked about this. There's a player right now that's suspended longer for gambling, you know what I'm saying, than this. So it's like, I get it. Like, everybody sees it and they think it's egregious, and then we want to rush change the rule, but it doesn't necessarily work like that, yo. Like, so again, I'm not talking about whether I think he did something wrong, but the whole reason why this is news, right, is because she gave him 6 games, the judge, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm sure from the judge's perspective, now again, I'm not talking about what I feel innocent, but from the judge's perspective, she's probably like, you're lucky I can give him 6 games. He settled 23 out of 24 cases, and he's never said he was guilty, and there's no charges that's ever been filed. So how much justice can the NFL or anybody really get? Mm-hmm. And again, this is one of the problems when it comes to sex crimes, right? There's not a lot of physical evidence, if any, right? And we're usually asking people to go out on a limb and against somebody that's more powerful than them and continue telling a story without the guarantee of justice, because it usually ends up like this, right? So it's hard to kind of for me to even have an opinion, because it's like they're going to keep playing the circular game. Deshaun Watson is going to say, well, I never changed, right? And the NFL is going to say, well, basically they're going to say, well, you made us look bad. They're not going to say he's guilty of anything. You know what I'm saying? They're going to say he broke the policy. What's the policy called?
The non-violent sexual conduct. That's what it was.
That's what she and that's exactly what she said he was guilty of, right?
Yeah.
So again, like, it's just a difficult situation because the NFL has a poor, record when it comes to sexual assault.
Yeah, I mean, it is, again, what I saw, one is how the NFL put it in place, and I think they were very strategic. And so they're saying, hey, let's bring in this judge who hasn't ruled on disciplinary action. So whatever she comes up with, well, we can say it's not enough, right? So we can look like and say, hey, you know what? That's not enough. We want more blood. We want more punishment. And it was counterintuitive for the reason that why would you bring somebody in who could give a ruling and you can appeal it anyway, right?
But not only appeal it, like, you can change it,
right?
But that's kind of why I'm looking at this whole situation. Like, it's like most people are just looking at the 6 games, but I came into this conversation just knowing the process, and it's like you bring in somebody who's outside of the NFL to make a ruling. They make the ruling, then you come back in and overrule them. I mean, whether it's 6 games, 8 games, 18 games, I don't care what it is. It just needs to look like it's some type of standard. It just looks crazy.
Exactly. And
so, again,
there was so much contradiction with this because they were talking like, all right, well, nonviolent sexual conduct. I'm like, well, even if it's nonviolent, there's still sexual misconduct, right? So that's one. And then 2, they were saying that he was a first-time offender or offense. I'm like, there were 24 people. I'm like, how is that?
Yeah, and that's why you get it. That's how you get into this gray area of. Again, I listen, man. I can't. It's too
multi-layered, brother.
It's too multi-layered, and I'm gonna be very honest. Like, I don't want to get off in a nuanced conversation about a fact or something, and it gets taken the wrong way. So
there was a lot. I mean, even with the Houston Texans, I felt like there was responsibility on their end for the reason that, I mean, of course, I don't work for the organization, but if this is happening between 2019, 2021, while he's still with the team and he has 60 different massage folks, like, come on, like, what's going on. Now, things didn't come out, of course, until he was like, yo, I want out. So they're like, oh, okay, this is what you want to do. Now more information is coming out. People are popping up. So there was responsibility on his end, of course, on the league and the Texans end, absolutely. So it was just a lot of different things. And unfortunately, outside or in addition to, the victims or the accusers, it's also the landscape of massage therapy, right? Because you have to look at it. This perpetuates, or his behavior, or alleged behavior, or however we want to frame it, perpetuates that, how dangerous as far as going into massage therapy, right? Like, where people, that dangerous perception where massage therapy is foreplay for sex, where these are trained individuals, right? These are trained individuals that are providing a service for all over the country in a variety, whether it's a salon, whether it's through sports, whether it's whatever. And now situations like this spotlights that, because now this changes, okay, how the conversation is gonna, the security that's put in place, right? It also highlights what a lot of massage therapists tend to go through, right? I mean, of course, you do have some of those little skeevy little kind of little joints and things, but we're not talking about that. Like, we're talking about, in this case, you're talking about actually licensed massage therapists that unfortunately have to go through this type of behavior where they may have clients that think they're like, oh, I'm in for a grand time. And this is not the case. So this spotlight a lot of sometimes some of the struggles and challenges that they go through. And it also, unfortunately, perpetuates the dangerous perception that massage therapy is a gateway into sex, which is not. It's reputable in, highly trained position or field. And, this may, as far as change, as far as when massage therapists are going into the home or when you're coming in to get services, this might change the dynamics for the landscape of that. But, it's, a lot of I hope that the individuals, whatever transpired, the accusers or the victims, that they're able to get the proper treatment and support that they need after going through this whole ordeal, for the reason that I don't care what you settle out for, that's not going to exactly get you through trauma, right? You know that and I know that.
So, I mean, listen, I wouldn't even insinuate people settle for a whole bunch of reasons. It doesn't mean that nobody's not guilty and any of that. All I'm saying is, you know what I mean? Like, people that have wealth and resources, they use the law to the extent of it, and it complicates things, and it extends things, and they create these gray areas where it's like, you can't call Deshaun Watson a whatever you want on national television. He might sue you and win.
Yeah.
Because he was never anything. So that's the hard part about when we start debating about how much games he should get. Is my whole point. Should he be shunned? Should he be criticized? Yes. But when we start talking about like games, I don't really know. I don't have an opinion on that because it's like it's hard to,
You can't quantify that. And then, like you said, the women, as far as the ones that accuse it that did settle, like there's another multi-layer component into that, because they go through the whole process as far as court and get the whole ordeal of them going through that process. It's a lot, man. It really is. It's unfortunate all around. So we'll see. Real quick, right before we get off of this topic. So he's suspended for 11 games, and I think he's eligible to come back. I think what's that, early December, maybe late November. You know who his first team that he's playing against, right?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, how about that? Interesting, right? Yeah. Very, very interesting. I wonder what the ratings are going to be on that game.
Right. So that's a whole nother. Let's move on. That's a whole nother.
All right. So on to something else that has been in the news: monkeypox. All right. So recently, the World Health Organization declared a global health emergency in response to the outbreak. And it seems like each week the cases are rapidly increasing. So just recently, I want to say last week, the U.S. had reported more than 7,500 cases of monkeypox across 46 states. And I'm sure even since then, it's even increased even more. So, monkeypox, for those that aren't aware, is primarily spread through skin-to-skin contact during sex. The World Health Organization reported men who have sex with men are at the highest risk of infection right now for monkeypox. Also, they indicated about 99% of cases are among men, and at least 95% of those patients are men who have sex with other men. And they put out a statement a little while ago that men who have sex with men should consider limiting their sexual partners to lower their risk of infection and reduce spread. All right. So initially, with how this was reported, or at least how they were trying to communicate this information about the spread and who it affects most, it seemed eerily similar to the when AIDS first came on the scene back in the early mid 80s, right? How it was they just really just spotlighted and identified one particular group. And I think that's the issue. There's nothing wrong with saying, okay, this particular population, we're seeing it more prevalent in this particular population of people, right? I don't see the issue in that, but the manner and how it's being communicated, Jay, I think that's where the danger lies, right? That's where we start to get into, because now you're creating a stigma for one particular population. Like, we've already seen this, especially when it's being done by government officials or health organizations.
Right.
We saw that a year or two ago with how COVID came out, and then how We're not going to talk about who is pointing the finger at a certain population or ethnicity, but you had officials just saying, oh, well, this is coming from a particular continent, right? It's coming from a particular group of people. And we saw the backlash and we saw how dangerous that was, especially for these individuals. So again, this resonated with me with some of how when AIDS and HIV came onto the scene, how the LGBT population or community was being highlighted on this. So that's where I feel like we really, especially health organizations, just have to be very careful and actually have to be more thoughtful in the manner of how you're going to say it's prevalent in this particular population. For the reason that, information starts spreading on social media, the stigma is going to get around, right? And it's going to hurt that community. It's a situation where you're going to stigmatize the people in that community and outside that community.
Well, I think, I mean, that's a good point, right? Because, in the beginning, like you had misinformation, like it was a sexually transmitted infection, right? And then obviously with good information, you learn that it's a skin to skin kind of infection, which is primarily why they were originally talking about like raves and stuff like that, right? Yeah. So, but that, again, that's part of the stigma when you start talking about certain groups, right? And in this case, they were talking about gay men, right? A lot of people were assuming that it was being spread through like sexual contact, right? When we're really talking about skin to skin contact, right? Not saying it can't be spread that way, but you know what I mean. Primarily, the primary mode, right? And again, it's an interesting, it's an important conversation because, it's a conversation that's going on right now. Like I sent you the article that was in the New York Times, in July, as late as July, in New York State, they're debating how to get this message out, right? And the doctor, I guess, who's the head of, I don't know, want to say the department. I think he's Department of, I don't know. But Dr. Weiss, he was kind of talking about his idea was to directly kind of talk to homosexual gay men and say, to advise them to slow down on, reduce the number of sexual partners during the summer, right? And you have people who are like advocates and people who are allies of LGBTQ community in that department saying that this message will be stigmatizing and backfire, right? So actively, you have people that are having this conversation as a part of public, like what is appropriate public health strategy, right? So again, it's important, like in terms of what you said, right? You should be able to direct, like if a population is high risk, they're high risk for something, right? If a population has obesity, then you shouldn't be not telling them that they have obesity in order to not offend them, right? But you don't necessarily call them FAT, right? You know what I'm saying? So it's a different way to do it, right? So again, I don't know what the perfect message would be here, right? And I don't know what it is, but I definitely know that there is a message that you could send that's not offensive, right? But I don't know. This article came out July 18th, 2022 in the New York Times, and they're debating that within the state offices, right? And the doctors are kind of saying, be direct, right? Say the population is homosexual men. We want them to reduce the number of sexual partners, right? And then you have other people saying that it's a misleading message and it's stigmatizing. I can see health providers wanting to get a direct message to a direct group of people, even if it is perceived as insensitive. And I can, see that the stigma it could have, right? Because it's already happening.
Yeah, because they're following that medical model, right? Like you and I, we've both had the opportunity to work with physicians in hospitals and in different environments and settings. And the medical model, tell them directly, right? Not very good bedside manner, not taking into consideration the dispositional or situational factors that the patient or the client is coming in with. It's gives them information, whatever they do with it, it's on them. And I think one is absolutely working with that community, right? Like we've talked about, and we've done research as far as like the way to, provide preventative care, right? So you can talk to a particular population, educate them, and say, hey, these are some of the things that we want to do. But when you're talking and you're providing this information to the general public, and when you say, all right, well, it's 99% in this population, what does that say to the general public? Oh, it's only them. That's not us.
I,
Right?
I,
It's
so I
you got to put some additional information and say, hey, like you said, it's skin to skin. So just because it's very prevalent, we're seeing high numbers, they're high risk, it doesn't mean that other individuals can't, you know,
right.
be affected by it. And I think that's the piece that they're missing. Like in all of like some of these PSAs and some of the general information that's getting put out through these various platforms or websites, you just see the high numbers, the 99, 95. You don't, they're not also saying, well, everyone should be careful with this, right? I mean, and it's strange and bizarre for the reason that like we just came from a whole crisis, right? We just came from the emergency response with one particular virus, and you would have thought that, all right, well, the World Health Organization or these other different government organizations would be like, all right, we're a little bit more prepared in giving out this information, so we don't drop the ball like we did last time. But they didn't, and honestly, it's even more like if you read up more about the monkeypox situation and about like because now the vaccines, right? The vaccines that they're trying to get out to that particular population, just kind of overall to the general public, they don't have any, right? There's a shortage.
Right.
In the right, and the reason why is because they didn't. America, I can only speak as an American, right? Didn't do their due diligence in being able to doing what they were supposed to do. I feel like in reducing the preventative care, right? Because monkeypox or the outbreak is typically in Europe and like North Africa, right? And these other different areas, right? That's normally where I believe it's found. So after 9/11, right? They had monkeypox vaccines because it was going to be considered a what do they call it? A biological weapon, right? So the
Okay.
US had about like 20 million monkeypox and smallpox vaccines. They didn't use them, right? When it was came out, like after everything had kind of settled down after 9/11 and the biological warfare and anthrax, all these things, all those threats like um simmered down like after a couple years, they just had the vaccines like just in storage someplace, Jack, right? So even though monkeypox was taking place like over there in like Europe and like North Africa, where a lot of individuals were dying and experiencing these things, they could have sent those vaccines over there, right? And that would have reduced, what I
Okay.
mean, the spread. That's what I'm saying, right? But you
Are you,
didn't. Now, again,
are,
this is me being naive, but again,
so
you
that was
didn't do
gonna
that. You didn't do that. So now, because you didn't take those measures and help out a different country or continent or this marginalized population, things have now spread and come over here. So a lot of the vaccines have expired. So like I think Philadelphia was supposed to get like close to 2,000 vaccines last week, and they only got like 600.
well,
So you see what I mean? Like, so this is where, like, all right, we want to talk about like, all right, this population, but we were in a position, or the U.S. was in a position to actually, kind of decrease the issue. But this is where it goes, man. Like, it's constantly, and I say that to kind of get off this rant, is that constantly is dropping the ball. Like these government organizations, unfortunately, are dropping the ball when it comes to getting information out, and whether they're stigmatizing one group or not helping another, like this is the problem that we continue to run into.
man, you just told me a story about the United States having the money or the resources to help somebody in another part of the world who was suffering and they didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're telling me that you're surprised. Yeah.
It backfired, man. It's like, listen, you could, you know what I mean? Like, it's like when we see that, you know what, probably could have reduced or avoided this situation, but it's like, nah, we're just gonna let these vaccines just sit in the warehouse and storage. It'll be fine. It's not our problem. It's not. We'll be fine. It'll be all right.
Won't be the last time.
Yeah, you're right. So something to continue to monitor, and as this develops, and absolutely gonna emphasize that everybody continue to stay safe out there. All right. Monkeypox, just like COVID, is nothing to play around with. Your health is the utmost importance out there. So absolutely continue to educate yourself from reputable sites and information sources, and continue just to be health to everybody. So really quick, wanted to provide an update because, again, a lot of things transpired while we were out, Jay. So a couple episodes ago, we talked about Brittany Griner, right? We talked about how she was awaiting trial, and we did a topic about how her spouse was trying her best to protect her mental health while not watching this thing. So while we were out, Griner was sentenced to 9 years in a Russian jail for drug smuggling. That's what she was found guilty of. So, unfortunately, the U.S. is still trying. They're coming up with just different ways to try to they're coming up with different what do they want to call it? Type of deals where they may exchange her for this Russian person we have in our facilities. He's like the merchant of death, I believe. The case, I don't know. It's a lot of other different things that are taking place. It's unfortunate that she's being found, for this, for 9 years. I feel like she's absolutely not. And I know we talked about you have to know the rules of other people. Like when you go into different continents, different countries, you got to know the rules, right? So can't escape that. She absolutely has to have responsibility. In addition to that, I also feel that because she was caught during this time between what's going on with Russia and what's going on with the Ukraine and just others, I feel like this was the worst time, and this added to it because there have been other situations where people were caught with even more type of contraband and they didn't get the time this year. So I think this is, Russia using, their opportunity to not just make an example, but see if they can get some leverage for things. But Jay, another development, I saw an article over the weekend. It seems like whatever Biden and the administration is failing as far as trying to get like these different conversations to get Brittany back. So it's been said that they're sending reinforcements, not Biden and them, but I don't know, some unnamed source. They're going to send Dennis Rodman over there to go get her.
I thought you were.
No, I'm serious. Listen, they said that he came out. He was on the article that they're sending him to go over there again. And he said, and I quote, "I'm going over there to go get that girl and help her." Now, listen, Jay, we have to keep this in mind, all right?
But she's a bargaining man. Like
he was cool. He went over to North Korea, remember? And he was cool with that dictator over there.
He went over there and watched a couple shows, and they treated him well. But he does more for them than they probably do for him.
Look, he actually brought somebody that was in captive. He brought somebody over. He one of the North Korea things. He went over to have a conversation, and he came back with one of their prisoners, one of the U.S. prisoner. I don't know.
Well, listen, man, this is excessive, but they're making an example out of her, like we talked about before, because of the time and the circumstance. We talked about that girl before from New York, that island that got caught with the 19 grams, $100 fine. She was home in 4 weeks. So obviously, they're going to make an example out of her because of the time. So it's unfortunate and excessive, but this is not ending anytime soon. Yeah, it's me.
So continue to monitor that. Another update on one of our previous topics, Bruce Willis, right? So we talked about how unfortunately he was diagnosed with aphasia, which is a language comprehension and development disorder due to brain damage. And we talked about how Hollywood was just running up the check on him, just putting him in, I think it was some odd number of like 20 different movies within 2-3 years, and they were hiding his challenges and his issues and giving him lesser speaking roles to try to mask that. Well, Jay, listen here, man. A couple weeks ago, I had the unfortunate opportunity of watching one of those movies. It came on, and I said, you know what, let me let me give this a shot. And I am here to report that that movie was god awful. All right. I mean, Jesus, Mary and Joseph. That thing was terrible, brother. I've it was called A Day to Die. Okay. And he was playing like a security guard. And I mean, when I mean they really took and reduced his speaking roles, his dialogue, like it was just like they would just the camera would go to him and then it would go someplace else and then something else would blow up. And he was it didn't make any sense. It was terrible, Jay. Like it got to the point where I tried my best to hang in there for like 30 minutes. My daughter, she was sitting there and like, you know how she was on her phone. It was that bad where, you know, a lot of times when they're on the phone, they don't even look up, right? She looked up and was just like, yo, what is this? Like, yo, I'm going upstairs. Like, it was really disheartening to see my guy John McClane and in that state, man. They did him a disservice. So yeah. Yeah, terrible quality.
Well, I'm not watching that. I'm gonna remember him for Die Hard, man.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I just thought I would provide an update, man, on one of those movies that they were pumping out and wheeling him through. It's not good. Not good at all. All right. All right, Jason, we might be going through another crisis here in the U.S. All right. You know what that may be?
Yeah, what's that?
Single men, my friend. There seems to be, we are in the age of lonely single men, according to an article in Psychology Today. All right. It says the dating opportunities for the heterosexual man are diminishing as relationship standards rise. All right. So younger and middle-aged men are, they say per reports, are the loneliest they've ever been in generation, and it's probably going to get worse. They say over the last 30 years, men have become a larger portion of that growing group of long-term single people. And while, of course, you don't actually need to be in a relationship to be happy, research indicates that men typically are happier and healthier when partnered. All right. So they said there are 3 factors that have changed the dating landscapes. Are you ready, Jay? The first one is dating apps. All right. They said that the dating apps are a huge driver of new romantic connections in the United States. They said the only problem is that upwards of 62% of users are men, and many women are overwhelmed with how many options they have. And they said the competition in online dating is fierce, and lucky in person chance encounters are rarer than ever. So he said men represent approximately 62% of dating app users, lowering their chances for matches. Jay, to this you say what about the dating apps?
I mean, that's 62%. That seems like about right. I mean, it lowers your chances for a match. I agree with that. And this part of the article I actually agree with, right? He was talking about the 62%, you know, obviously that lowers your chances for a match. And then he was talking about Hinge, kind of another piece of data, just saying like a lot of people like enjoyed their first date because they kind of use a lot of higher standards to match people. So he's kind of talking about I guess they're people being taken out of the dating pool because they are enjoying the people they're being matched up with, right?
Right.
So that was like the first part of the article, and that was his first one theme of 3 broad themes. And I agree with that kind of totally because those are the percentages and the statistics. Then after that, it kind of goes a little left in terms of it becomes like really an advertisement for his TikTok show.
Yeah.
Rather than like data. But I understand he starts really just talking about what his viewers feel about men. So I'm not really, again, I think it's a good like cross section and a good like idea into how his viewers, because he said his viewers were females 25 to 45, right? So he kind of talks about what they feel like males' deficits are, I guess, that they're potential partners. So it's a good view from their perspective, but other than that, then he goes to men have deficits and they need to go to therapy. So it's kind of like,
hey man, he's
you
giving
know,
us business. He's giving us business. You know, he said, look, he said the relationship standards also are suffering. Also, he said, you
yeah,
know,
so,
men
yeah.
need to be more emotionally available and good communicators. So send them to therapy.
So listen, I'm gonna look at it in good faith. Like I think the first part is absolutely accurate. Obviously, the second part, depending on who you are, you might think it's a little misleading, but you know, when we talk about the dating market, you know, women 25 to 45, their opinions do matter. You know,
Right.
they're
Right.
probably part of the dating, market, but you just kind of know reading the article that it's a little slanted because it's his audience members and his viewers. So
They feel it's a bit skewed.
man, you got to look at it with a little grain of salt. But you know, I mean, listen, it's a perspective, right? Because every perspective, when you look at dating shows, when you look at people's opinions, it's not going to necessarily be an accurate cross, sample of every person, right? It may be segments because certain shows are going to cater to younger men or older women, or whatever demographic. So it's a good idea of what his audience is thinking about men that are out there, They think they need relationship skills,
Hey, listen, you know my perspective and my take on the dating apps. Okay, we've had this conversation many a time. All right, and if any of these guys walk into my office, all right, I'm gonna tell them straight off the bat, get rid of the dating apps. All right,
You're going to tell them to get off the dating
I'm gonna
apps.
tell them to get off the dating apps. You don't need them. See what I mean? They're out there. All right, just got to go outside. That's all you have to do. And according to this, you got to step your game up. All right. Okay. You need to be more emotionally available and learn how to communicate. You can't communicate because you're on the dating apps. You see, it's created a vicious cycle, Jay. Do you see that? Vicious cycle.
I
All right.
listen, I hear you.
It's the circus, the avoid. It's a cycle of avoidance. That's what it is. All right.
I mean,
So,
listen, I feel like in general, I don't know what it would say when this is studied, when it's said and done, what it's going to say. It's done to our communication. I definitely think it's kind of softened people's communication skills a lot. But there's a group of people I think, that probably wouldn't participate in the dating market as much if they didn't have dating apps because, they're probably, a little bit introverted. So I think it depends, because remember during the pandemic, they were talking about it's like record numbers of people on dating apps because that's the only place you could go. So everybody was on there. So,
well, I think also, and I will say at least this may give the skills deficit some merit, right? We just talked about how high the number of men there are, right? Because overall, there are more women than men, right?
right.
So if you're a guy or a male, if your perspective is, well, I'm liable or I have a high probability of landing someone because there are just so many around and they're going to maybe settle, maybe that might be contributing to why the skills are at such, a lack or lacking. Or I mean, I don't know. I'm just thinking that you kind of figure if you're looking at the odds or the ratio, it's like, all right, well, we're outnumbered like vastly. So, all right, well, I'm guaranteed to link up with somebody. I don't know. I mean, like you said, if there are so many on the phone, on the dating apps, then I don't know, just kind of playing a numbers game. But I mean, that also might be contributing to,
There's so many factors, because he didn't say what dating app he got that number from. You know what I mean? So, is it a hookup app or is it a relationship app? Is it you know what I mean? Like, is it an app that's, leaning towards older people or younger college age people? Like, who knows? But And I get it. It's not his responsibility to have every, stat in the world, but like I said, this was clearly, it seems like this was clearly, I could see him like doing a show and him saying, oh, men need better relationship skills from like interacting with his callers and everything. Then constructing the article around, it's like,
that's when he pulls out the book.
It's like bottom up stuff. It's like he took the conclusion and then I think he kind of just shaped everything around it, which I don't have a problem because this is not, he didn't shape it in terms of being super scientific. You know what I mean? So he can find data to support his, whatever his hypothesis was. But listen, love it or hate it, there's a group of women out here who are in the dating market that feel like men need better relationship skills, right? So we can, I can rationalize and I can pick away at where he got the data from, but there's still a group of women out there that feel like we need better relationship skills. So
yeah, there's some merit to it. I'm sure there are a decent group of women that would agree with that sentiment. So Jay, if you're lucky enough to actually get one of these dates on one of the apps or maybe be in a relationship, all right, you could possibly also either be the victim of or be the person that does the ghosting. All right. So ghosting happens when someone cuts off all lines of communication with the person without an explanation, right? So the phenomenon has become pretty common on social media and dating sites. However, with the isolation that we just kind of briefly mentioned during the pandemic, like you said, it's forcing more people to be online together more than ever, just kind of due to the circumstances. So there was a psychology professor who studied the role of technology use in interpersonal relationships and well-being. And he wanted to understand what leads individuals to ghost others and if ghosting had any perceived effects on one's mental health. And to address these questions, his research team recruited 76 college students through social media and on-campus flyers, 70% of them being female. The study participants signed up for one of 20 focus groups, ranging in size from 2 to 5 students. Group sessions lasted an average of 45 minutes each, and the participants provided responses to questions asking them to reflect on ghosting experiences. And here's what they found. They said some students admitted they ghosted because they lacked the necessary communication skills to have an open and honest conversation, and
right.
whether that conversation happened face to face or via text or email. So one of the participants says, "I'm not good at communication or communicating with people in person, so I definitely cannot do it through typing or anything like that." Another person said, "I do not have the confidence to tell them that, or I guess it could be easy, or it could be because of my social anxiety." Okay. In some other instances, participants opted to ghost if they thought meeting the person would stir up some emotional or sexual feelings that they're not ready to pursue. Excuse me. He said people are afraid of something becoming too much, the fact that the relationship is somehow getting to the next level. Some others said they ghosted because of safety concerns. 45% ghosted to remove themselves from a toxic or unpleasant or unhealthy situation. And one of the least reported yet perhaps most interesting reasons for ghosting someone, they said protecting the person's feelings. They said it's better to ghost, the thinking goes, than to cause the person hurt feelings that may come with an overt rejection.
Right.
With that being said, recent data suggests that U.S. adults generally perceive breaking up through email, text, or social media as unacceptable and prefer the in-person breakup conversation, though. All right. How about that? Other data suggests that U.S. adults generally perceive breaking up through it as unacceptable and that it can have negative consequences for mental health. They say short term of these ghosting felt overwhelming rejection and confusion, and then they reported feelings of low self-worth and self-esteem. Part of the problem is that it lacks clarity and not knowing where communication abruptly stopped. So, and sometimes the element of paranoia ensues that the ghostee tries to make sense of the situation. What do you think about that, Jay, as far as ghosting?
Listen, I think this is one of these situations where people are going to respond one way to a survey and then another way in real life, right? So if you send people a survey via email, it's easy to assume 70% of people are going to say, no, break up with me in person. You owe me that, right?
Right.
But on the other end, when we look at this type of experiment, right, the most common reason for ghosting somebody, AKA dumping them, right, is lack of interest to pursue the relationship. So it's easy to draw, make an inference or draw the conclusion that, the convenience of having that space, right? It makes it more convenient to break up with you via ghosting, right? It may be harsh, right? But it's another word for rejection and dumping, right? And they can do that much easier with that space in between them. So again, rejection, I don't have the confidence to tell them, right? The attraction's not there, right? The minority of the people said the relationship was too much, or basically they didn't want to kind of jump into something. But either way, what this type of data tells you is that we have a generation of people, who, I don't want to say that they're taking the easy route in terms of, less face time, less accountability, right? Imagine if your children could apologize to you over the phone or through the wall. They would choose it every time, right?
Yeah.
So what's the difference between breaking up? Why are we surprised?
The key ingredient here is what you mentioned, convenience. All right. It's a lot easier for you to do it from the safety or the comfort of your own home, on your computer, on your laptop, or your phone, to not just do anything, right? Like you would assume that it would be easier to say, all right, well, things aren't working out via text message. But now it's gotten even more convenient where it's just like, I'm just not even going to respond at all. They'll figure it out, right?
But see, so I got a question for you. This is the real problem, and I'm not trying to make light of this situation, but this is the real problem, because if you get ghosted, right, most of the problem is these people are dwelling, and are they going to continue to reach back out? Why didn't they want? A lot of the issue is, right, first of all, you got to accept that ghosting is another way of breaking up in terms of a relationship. So a person is ghosting you just because they're not talking to you, it means that they're dumping you, right? So what people need to figure out is how long before they determine that the relationship is over, right? So if you meet a great girl and you're talking to her, and then she ghosts you on Monday, by Thursday, are you broken up? Is it 2 weeks? This is where I think the problems come in, right? Because you have somebody on the other end lingering. Clearly, the person who has ghosted you has moved on. Clearly, right? Yeah. So the real problem is on the other end, the person who's the victim of being ghosted. Should we have a 3-day rule, 4-day rule?
I think that needs to be incorporated now. Like we remember how we used to have all the unwritten rules. I remember it was, all right, well, after you go out with somebody, how long does it take, or should you call them, right? You don't want to look desperate. You don't want to look all that. I think ghosting now has to be incorporated into some of those unwritten, rules, or those unspoken rules of dating, right? It has to be, because that's the new thing.
Protect your own well-being, right? So if somebody doesn't respond to you in 3 to 4 days, then you need to consider yourself single again. Especially in the days of dating apps, it may sound foul, but you have to go into these interactions assuming that a person is talking to multiple people most of the time. And if you don't hear from them for 3 or 4 days, that situation is probably over.
I believe that ghosting should absolutely be part of the preparation of when you do dating apps and other different things similar to that nature, right? It may be, I don't know if there needs to be a part of during the terms and agreements and conditions, but it might need to be a certain place where it says, hey, ghosting is very likely and possible. Where some people need to see it in black and white. They need to have this acceptance based on what we saw. It's like, hey, it's a strong possibility that you will be ghosted or you can ghost somebody. Okay. So that you don't get caught up in this rumination cycle, like you said, of trying to second guess and the paranoia kicks in. Well, is it me? Is it not me? No, it's a part of the dating game right now.
But bro, and I'm not disagreeing with you, but aren't we getting to a point in a society where it's like we have to have a soft landing for everything? Like people, you get dumped in life. Like, everybody is not interested. Everybody I wanted was not interested in me. I wish they did. I wish they all wanted me. They wasn't all interested. I had to pick my face up, right, from off the ground, right? I had to realize everybody's not going to be interested in me. That doesn't mean I'm inadequate. That doesn't mean anything. It just means that this person was not interested in me, you know? So what I mean is, could a person, am I advocating for people to get led on? No, obviously. But what I'm saying is rejection is part of relationships. Like if you don't deal with relationships, rejection with just somebody who just don't like the way you look or your style or the introduction, the line you use to introduce yourself, how you going to deal with rejection within your relationship? If we need landings that soft for a stranger that doesn't owe you anything, it's crazy.
Here's the thing. I want us as a society to stop acting like ghosting hasn't been around prior to this actually being labeled. Okay, let's have a real conversation. Okay, there were plenty of times when you had the regular wall phones in the kitchen, or even the cordless phone, or even back in the day where they had the rotary phones. Okay, listen, you went out with somebody. Now maybe it wasn't just online, of course, because that wasn't in existence, but there were times that, I'm sure our parents, grandparents, even us back in the day, when you went out and met up with somebody, and then it was like, all right, cool. So yeah, I'll call you. Yeah. You never heard back from that person.
Or you talk to them a couple of times and you're like, nope, let the answer machine get that.
Yeah, let it go. Like, yeah, they would come past the house, tell them I'm not here, right? Like it's ghosting and this type of dumping or rejection, or however you avoid getting out of this situation or this communication with somebody, has been around for years, for generations even. It's just so now that a lot of these terms have been given labels, right? Now that all of a sudden, it's ghosting or it's this, right? That's because that's where we're in. We're in this particular generation has a term for everything. But this has been going around, right? And not to say that it doesn't hurt. Yes, rejection is something that people have to deal with. They have to learn how to cope with, and it's not fun. And it's different for every person, giving whatever their previous experience has been. At the same time, it's part of the dating game. It's a part of interpersonal relationships. It's a part of you finding whoever's right for you. And it's been around. So I just, for people to see or have this reaction to like ghosting or this type of behavior, I'm not even gonna just say ghosting, but this type of behavior when it comes to dating is like so nuanced, or is some type of novelty. It's not. It's been around for forever. So let's stop acting like it. All right. And you move on, right? You learn how to cope and how to manage and self-reflect, and you move on in the absence of somebody giving you feedback. I mean, is that something that we all want? Like the person that doesn't want to talk to you anymore, or should it be, hey Jay, I'm not interested because I didn't like the way you did this, and I feel like you can make some improvements in it. I don't need a list. All right. See what I mean? Like, you weren't feeling me, that's cool. All right. I don't need a scouting report or like a list of where I can perform my, improve my performance. I'm good. I'm good. I'll take the ghosting. I'm straight.
I appreciate being ghosted a couple times in my life. I appreciate it.
Hey man, those ghosting may have saved our lives, bro.
That's right, brother.
All right. Now, before we get out of here, absolutely have to bring some important information to the forefront. All right. So, and we talked about this briefly before we got on, Jay, that there's been an unfortunate situation and things that have been taking place over the border. Okay, so there have been like these rainbow colored cotton, or not cotton, candy looking rainbow fentanyl pills. All right, so let me try to pull this up really quick. um
Definitely just for awareness purposes, you know, because it looks like candy, right? It looks like Smarties. Um, you know, for parents, teachers, anybody who works with like, you know, young people, you know, you want to let them know because it kind of looks like a party drug for adolescents or teenagers. You know, definitely you would be concerned for accidental overdose with children, and specifically like, you know, gangs, cartels, people that produce these type of drugs. You know, they made them with these bright colors to kind of target this population. So just want to be aware of that rainbow fentanyl type pills, all of those things floating around.
Absolutely. So there were thousands of rainbow fentanyl pills that were seized by authorities, which, as you mentioned, Jay, is could be a possible new trend that is targeting kids. So they said Customs and Border Protection agents in Arizona seized more than 15,000 fentanyl pills that were strapped to a person's leg this past Wednesday or last week. And the way they have these candy-looking pills, right? And they were seized at the port. And like you mentioned, Jay, if you take a look at them, they look like sweet tarts, right?
Right.
And for those people that are familiar with candy or sweet tarts, they look like round little pieces of candy with various different colors, and that's exactly how these fentanyl pills look like. And it's scary because you and I know, and most of the general public, is that we are very much still in um this epidemic of heroin, right? And fentanyl, I mean, is one of the most I mean, it's getting people out of here, right? It's leading to a lot of overdoses and
Bad.
and
No.
and and unfortunately, these drug dealers, man, these drug makers, these individuals in this, they are getting more and more resourceful to get their product out and to make money, and they don't care who dies, who it affects, how many families. Um and the fact that this could be on any school campus um is scary, right? They said there was already a bus, I think, out in Oregon. So that means it's already made its way up to the northern western area. So if it's up there, that means it could be anywhere. So that's something that parents absolutely need to be aware of. Schools need to be aware of. Um, just being hyper vigilant. Kids need to be aware of this because, again, these these dealers are crafty. Of course, they're dishonest by nature, and they could be telling you that it's any type of thing, and it could be fentanyl, and it could be lethal. So if you guys get an opportunity, they're called the rainbow fentanyl pills, and so you guys can go online, check it out, get as much information about it. Please, we must remain hyper vigilant, and we must remain aware because the drug game continues to evolve. Everyone, I know we don't want to think about things of that nature, but we wouldn't be responsible on this platform as if when we receive new information about substance use that we didn't get the information out to you guys, the public. So absolutely, you want to stay informed in the evolving drug trade and just that area because it affects all our communities, right? Drugs don't discriminate. So absolutely, you guys want to be aware, get as much information, pass the information on to other parents, to schools, other officials, and please be on the lookout for this because this is very scary and very, very dangerous.
Yo, man, I agree. Like again, you know, the danger in this is the appearance, right? Think
Mhm.
about it. With Halloween coming up, right? It looks like a party drug. Looks like, you know, a candy a child will want. I don't think it's gonna be the last time we hear about it. But again, just kind of bringing this up for information, psychoeducation. So type it into Google and check it out.
Absolutely. All right, Jay. We covered a lot. Anything else before we get out of here?
Nothing really. Just want to thank everybody for hanging with us. Again, you know, today was a little bit different, you know, style in terms of we covered a whole bunch of stuff. That was good. So just trying to catch up a little bit. We're going to, get the content out a little bit faster. And again, just want to thank everybody who takes the time to listen. So we appreciate it. Prioritize your mental health.
Absolutely. And we are absolutely seeing the numbers of subscribers gradually increase. So we appreciate the support. Yes, prioritize your mental health. Shop mentalhealthclothing.com for my guy Jay for his clothing. All right. Not only prioritize it, but you can wear it too. All right. So that's what you can do. Again, we appreciate the feedback. Any questions, statements, or also topics that you guys want us to cover. We love it. We want to hear back from you guys. So we appreciate also, we've been seeing that on YouTube. We've been seeing a lot more people comment and engaging in the conversation. Dr. J and I love going back and forth and interacting and communicating with you guys. So keep up that energy. We love it. Like you said, wishing everybody good mental health. Until next time, Jay.
All right, bro. Later, man.